Welcome to the AI Renaissance podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Zach Hawtof, co-founder and CEO of Tighnit. Zach, welcome. How you doing?
Karan, good to be here. Happy. How you doing?
Happy. That's always a good way to be, yeah, where do we find you today?
Well, today I'm in New York, where I normally am, but like the weather this week's been stellar, so it feels like spring is springing. So, yeah, the trees are blooming again, and like everyone's outside. So New York's coming back.
You say that as you're wearing a Patagonia jacket inside.
Yes,
So you're really selling this, Zach.
it's light jacket weather. It's not quite at the full t-shirt, but yeah, sitting
Okay.
inside all day, not moving. You gotta stay warm.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm in Playa del Carmen, so I've been, half t-shirt on, half t-shirt off, so
Yeah,
doesn't
you haven't
doesn't
worn a
quite do it for
jacket
me, but
in months, I'm sure.
I haven't worn shoes in months. Um, well, thank you again for being on. This is the second episode of the AI Renaissance. We talk about everything that's happening in AI, but specifically for creators. And you were a creator, you're a builder, you have your own startup in space. We'll get into all that, but let's start with your background. You've been in and adjacent to the AI space for a long time now. I don't know. Did you get into this right after college or in college? Yeah. What's kind of your background with AI?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't start my career in AI. I did take, went to Berkeley with you, and like, there was a lot of great early AI work. So did take like an AI class when I was getting my CS degree at Berkeley, and that was like my first introduction to kind of learning like how AI works behind the scenes, neural networks, and like how you can actually build out kind of these full like AI models around it, but never really got into it. I think most of like the work that I've done has really been around the web. So like user experience, building like low code tools, no code tools, and having these great user experiences built on top of your user data. So like working at Salesforce, a lot of taking these powerful like backend data platforms and bringing them closer to your customers. That's been my primary goal. And then I was lucky enough that when I left Salesforce, I joined a company called AirKit. Worked a lot on low code there as well, but that AirKit kind of was like right as GPT was really kicking off, and the company did a massive pivot into the AI space. So we learned a lot about like how to just take developer tools, AI, and bring them together for just better customer experiences. So now AirKit's actually back part of Salesforce, running their new Einstein Copilot product, and I'm out kind of working on Tighnit. And like this has been the first foray into building like an AI first company. And I guess the way that I like to pitch that is, you don't want to, or at least the way I look at it, right? Of course, there are AI companies, but if you're building in like applied AI, our big thing has always been how do you take a product that couldn't have existed before AI, deliver that product, and then deliver AI on top of it that really pushes it to the next level, right? And so with Tighnit, we're building a community platform built on Slack. Slack is, 50 million users. And most people don't know this, but a majority of those users, about 63% of them, actually use Slack as a community platform. So we're building an AI powered community platform on top of Slack. And we've learned a lot in that process of like what it means to build with like this conversational layer.
Interesting. Okay, before we get into Tight Knit, I do want to touch on kind of AirKit and like that pivot into AI. Like, when was that? What time period?
Oh, times are tough because yeah, when you're at a startup, it's hard to know what like the point in time and point of change is. But uh, I would, if I can recall correctly, just experiencing GPT-3 for the first time, I think was like an inflection point for not just our company at the time, but like every company. Just seeing that there was this tool that could be used to deliver almost human-like experiences was just kind of one of the, people call it that iPhone moment or the internet moment, right? But I actually think it was so much more obvious what was going to happen from here on out, that if you're able to scale what a human behavior can actually do at scale, that is immense amount of like capabilities, right? Like you even hear you hear Sam Altman talk about all the time. And I think this is where he's obviously seeing the latest and greatest, but it's like where everyone kind of can imagine it is the first $1 billion company with one person will one day be formed. It all started with this whole idea that you can scale human behavior using GPT-3.
Yeah. So getting into that a little bit more, when I say time period, like when was that? Like 2017, 18,
Oh
19,
no, yeah. I mean, when did
like later than that,
GPT-3?
maybe. Yeah, it was
It's
like
so
what?
funny. We feel like AI has been around for so long, right? But GPT-4 just had its first birthday, and it's like
Yeah.
it feels crazy because we use it so much every day. But I would like GPT-3. What would that have been? I mean,
Well,
um,
GPT-3 itself was, I don't know, maybe like 2 years
so yeah,
before
maybe you're right.
ChatGPT.
Maybe I'm confused. Maybe it was 3.5 when it came out. I can't remember the exact point, but it was when I was at AirKit for sure that the whole company realized that there was a bigger opportunity. Um,
Well,
but
so
yeah,
like,
that's a
okay,
good question.
ChatGPT was late 2022. And I
Hmm.
think GPT-3, like just the model being released and developers being able to use it, was I think like 2 years before that. So it might have been like 2020 or something like that.
So then, yeah,
Um,
I'm messing up for sure. It's not GPT-3. It's probably when ChatGPT came out,
I
and
see.
I think it came
Yeah.
out first with 3.5. So that was probably the point in time.
So when a company, or like, wait, first of all, what does AirKit do, or like what do they do?
Well, now they're part of Salesforce, and they're
Yeah.
part like the
Or
backbone
at that
behind
time?
the Einstein Copilot. Really, like building customer experiences that are flexible, flowable, and like having personalized experiences as you kind of operate through like an enterprise platform. So like a good example, working with like an insurance company, onboarding a new customer, there are hundreds of questions, and the personalization levels that need to be built into those tools is super complex, right? So having this kind of flow where you can decide based on how a user is interacting with the application what to show them next is really like the future of it. Which we should. I think one of my favorite things recently is there's a new tool from Vercel, and I don't even know if we've talked about this outside the podcast, but they are working on V0, and they just came out with kind of this next iteration of it that can actually generate components on the fly, like visual UI components that can be used to kind of demonstrate functionality where it's like, look, if I ask you about a product, it's going to show you a product card rather than an event. It will show you an event card, and like having flexibility and components as you actually interact with an AI bot, and it can show you different form factors. That's a space that we haven't quite gone to around like pure user experience, which I think is really the big next space for AI.
Interesting. So, go like walk me through that process of like when a company like AirKit, when you see something new like that, like what was that process like of then kind of like playing around with that technology, using that technology, and obviously it's like a holy shit, wow, this is going to change everything kind of moment. I mean, we all had that on a personal level, but from a business perspective, how do you look at that? And then what was the process like of kind of like redesigning the whole business, or like kind of like what did you actually do from like, you know, like internally to actually adapt, or to, start using whatever it was, whether it was like ChatGPT or whatever you started using in the product itself. And like, how do you kind of like start thinking about that? Because you're basically doing that same. thing now in a startup, but you had that experience before. So, like, how do you go about thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean it's worth almost just like last week I was at Salesforce's developer conference, so it's almost worth mentioning how it exists today in the Salesforce ecosystem because that's the one that actually is going to be delivered to customers at this point, right? And like seeing how Einstein Copilot kind of operates, where it has agent tools that it can tap into, and then and this is the key thing around why Salesforce is such an upper hand, all of the customers' data being available within Salesforce gives the AI bot such a huge, like, powerful place to be, right? And I think like having access to data as an AI is important, and it's actually why you're probably seeing so much investment going back into data and into all these different data startups is because everyone's like, look, in order to build the most powerful AI system, we need the most data, and integrations are expensive. So if you can build platforms where the data lives in a centralized place, you have a huge upper hand in building these amazing AI based experiences. So to go back to your original question of like how would a copilot work, right? For an enterprise product, like I like commerce as an example. It's one that we kind of live in every day. That's a great example of like to imagine how would a commerce experience work. I've made an order and I decide I need to actually change the address of the order. So I can go to an AI bot and say, hey, I need to change my order. It knows who I am and it knows the orders that I made. So it can ask me which of these orders you're trying to update. I can select those orders. And then it knows my intent, right? My intent is to change the address, and it might have this understanding of what the address field is on the order object. So it can actually then ask, where would the next order be? And I think going back to like the V0 thing is, can it generate UI on the fly in the future where it's actually going, look, maybe I don't have a particular like component ready, but what I'll do is I'll generate that UI of an address update field, and it will actually allow me to update it and on submit update the address behind the scenes. So it's building not just a like way to collaborate with just text as like a chatbot. It's actually building UI based experiences, which is the way that most of us work today. And I think that's the future of these co-pilots, or especially in the enterprise, is having a tool that can help you just solve problems without having to get online with a customer support agent.
Yeah. So then they get acquired by Salesforce. I think you had already left, or maybe you left after. You obviously wanted to get, kind of go all in on this wave. Like, what was your thinking like after? How did you start approaching like what you wanted to do next? How you're gonna play the kind of AI move? Because there's so many different layers of, you know, the tech stack, and just like, I mean, it's just such a massive industry at this point. You could really go so many different ways. Like, what were you thinking about? How did you want to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, so the first tool we tried to build actually was a conversation intelligence tool to help marketers deliver content. And well, if we had kept going with it, I'm sure there's potential for it. What we realized is like we live in no different of a world than back when the web was starting, or back when all this other, all these big waves are happening. Is you really just have to build towards what you know. Um, there's a lot of people that want to go start an AI company, and I think what they don't realize is that it takes just the work of starting a company around AI is not your silver bullet, right? You have to understand the problem space, the go to market solutions of like, what does my actual customer need first? And then how does AI solve it? And if you don't understand that first step of like, what does my customer need? And you just go out and try to solve the problem, you're going to have a very tough time building like your next AI startup. And so we failed on that first one, and then we took a step back. We took our own advice of what do we know really well. We know community platforms, we know enterprise community platforms specifically, and we've always been very adept at Slack and Salesforce and kind of that customer service market. And so we said, let's take what we know about that and solve that problem, and then see how AI can make it even better. And I think
Mm,
AI is an accelerant rather than as a base product, like the base feature functionality, but really as an accelerating feature gives your company way more leverage in terms of like being able to deliver a great product because you're solving a problem first, and then AI only makes it better, easier, and more configurable for your customer. And
yeah.
so, yeah, leaving to go, figure out what was next for us. I've been working on ideas since April of last year, and Tighnit's been the leading one so far, right? And that's been the space that we've been working in, is like community building, like just having a place where your customers or even just your community members, they want to feel more connected to the community, right? And having an AI system, not to replace people, but really to guide, kind of to be the guide to say, look, I know what you're interested in, and I know other topics because semantic search, I can find other topics that you're interested in. I understand what you want. Having AI be able to guide you back into the platform, super powerful stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into kind of like what you're actually working on. You mentioned you wanted to start with the problem, starting with the space that you already knew. So, what is the problem that you wanted to try and tackle? Because I think that is actually an approach that most people are not thinking clear, or not even an approach. Like that's just like people are not thinking clearly enough about what problems they're trying to solve, and just kind of throwing an AI solution on whatever. And I've been working in the crypto space for like 7 years now, and this has been a very pointed and honestly accurate criticism of crypto, which is that you're just throwing a blockchain solution on a bunch of random things that don't actually call for that solution. You're not really solving any problem. So I think it's a very measured approach. And so, yeah, like what is the problem that you guys are trying to solve?
Yeah, I mean, removing AI from it, right? Like, what is a community platform, and why do enterprises build them? And the big premise, there's a few, right? Community sits at like the center of a bunch of different departments. It's marketing, it's service, it's product, it's even like HR, right? It has so many places where it can provide value to different departments. It's really like one of those perfect add-on departments where you have this ability to take users who are highly engaged with your product and engage them even further. Put people that want to be more involved in your company. This gives them a space to do so. It gives people that need help and support an easy place to not just get quick answers from your employees, but also from the community itself, right? And we use community tools all the time. Reddit is a great example. When you need a review, you much more trust a review from another individual than you do from the company itself. So the way that works with like an enterprise, having somebody who's not even part of the company vouching for you, answering questions, building those like customer advocacy aspects of stuff, and inside the enterprise gives you a whole channel in terms of being able to find new customers, help new customers, and deliver. And so community, while having a bunch of different facets around that, is one of those things that enterprises have started to build because they're looking for new ways to not just like have an audience, but actually have members, if that makes any sense. People that are actually part of the community, the way that like Notion has built this huge community of users who build their careers now on Notion and actually support Notion wherever they go from company to company. That's what most businesses want. And what we've gone out to do is we've said, what is the largest community platform out there? There's a company called Slack, right? We all know it. It is not advertised as a community tool. It's advertised as a productivity platform. So, but the problem is it's one of the largest community tools out there, and there's no one building the right tools to make it a true community platform. So we set out to go solve that problem first. And then with AI, we have this huge upper hand, right? Slack is a conversational community tool. Everything is built around the conversation. And the way that we can use AI to work in Slack is not just like you and ChatGPT one on one, but it's you, your customers, your partners, all powering a single AI system so that everyone can better understand your business, they can better engage with your business, and then we build tools around it to help you grow and scale. And so that's a bit about the vision of Tighnit.
Okay, very cool. So first off, how did you decide on Slack? You said 63% of Slack users use it as a community platform, which I definitely didn't know. I would assume most people didn't know that. When you say community platforms, like what they're just joining like different kinds of like industry groups or things like that, where you just want to like is it almost like the way people use like Discord or like big Telegram chats or even like subreddits or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's super similar. I think Slack has, there's all types of communities. There's communities of product, these product based communities, a little bit like how Midjourney almost operates. That's a product community in Discord. There's products or communities of interest. If you're a big mountain biker, there might be a mountain biking community, and there's communities of practice. So like I'm a product manager by background. The Lenny's product manager community is a community of practice. So there's all sorts of different types of communities that exist out there. And you're right, Telegram, Discord being other community tools, Slack kind of existing in that same ethos. And the question we get a lot is like, okay, why one versus the other? And we meet a lot of people that we do say actually you should go to Discord, but there are quite a few that don't know why they should go to Discord versus Slack versus any other community tool. And what we have found generally is you kind of want to meet your customer where they are. You got to understand who your member is, I should even say. Who is the member that you want to target, right? If you are going after, crypto, like you've talked about, like the spaces you're in, a lot of crypto is in Telegram and a lot of crypto is in Discord. There is not a lot of crypto in Slack. So I don't recommend, any kind of crypto company trying to force their users out of the platforms that they already exist in. But if you're going after the enterprise and you're trying to go after users that use Slack on a day to day, there's really no better platform, right? To be able to teach people how to use your community platform, and they already use Slack every day, and they just need to click into one different workspace, and suddenly they're now part of your community. That's the space that you want to build towards. So it's the lowest friction to get new users, especially the users that you want to target. And so that's always been my recommendation: is just build where your users are. Um, it is the best way to test community, and our job is to make sure that we help you with Slack being a better community platform, since Slack isn't advertised as one and doesn't have all the community tools that maybe a Discord might have. That's our goal, is to help kind of push that needle a little further.
Mm. So can you let's go into the product a little bit. Like, can you give a very high level overview of you talked about the problem. How are you addressing the problem? And then maybe more into specifics about how the product actually works. And then we'll go deeper into the AI elements of it later.
Yeah, I mean, there's just to get into like little tiny AI elements of it. So one of the common problems that we hear about with Slack is, you can't generate SEO, right? You can't put it on the web and actually have your great conversations put out for other people to learn from. And so a lot of what we have done with Tighnit is we generate a web forum around your Slack community. So those posts can be shared publicly. They can be put on social. They can be put on your website, embedded even into your application. And so you have this way of taking what used to be a walled garden and pushing it out to a larger audience so you can build social proof around the community product. And so what we do around with AI with that, right? So one is we create an embedding of all those messages. So later on, you can search, you can use semantic search, and even generate like full kind of like AI responses on top of your community member posts. But at the same time, we do a lot with AI that's very simple, right? Like the way that you post into Slack is not the way you would be posting to the web. So in order to kind of bridge that gap to turn what was just a Slack message into a like SEO enabled post. We generate, your title for you. So we generate the title of the message with AI and even the URL slug so that you can get the best possible SEO out of that post without having to define it all yourself. So creating like lower friction experiences for filling in certain fields, I think is a phenomenal use case of AI, especially ones where you can predict what might the customer actually want to do or what might the user actually want to solve. Um, so yeah, hopefully that helps answer a little bit about like how we use AI push out Slack messages in a much more customized format.
Yeah, and what is your initial kind of, or like, if you're pre kind of user at this point, like, what does your ideal user look like? Like, whether it's from communities that are going to be engaging with your product, whether it's the actual users themselves, like, what does that look like? And have you kind of started the process of uh, business development or starting to engage with these customers? Like, how does
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a long answer, right? So we do have customers, and I think I think I can almost answer as like who is the customer that tends to gravitate most to our experience. And it's a lot of startups for sure, a lot of startups that have these large Slack communities, but also we found a lot of love with associations, uh, people that are trying to build these membership based communities where their entire goal is, look, we're going to build around you and provide enough services for you, and having those users join our community and be able to get more out of it and be able to push more about their own user generated content on the community platform to social, and to be able to share how they're a part of the community. We have found that particular type of user has been very interested in what we're trying to build here.
that? Okay. Um, how? What are the biggest? Would you say like difficulties of building? I don't even know. Like, do you classify yourself as an AI startup, or how do you classify yourself? I guess maybe
Yeah,
for the fundraising deck,
I mean
you kind of have to.
no, and this is, we're at the phase. Like, here's a good example. I'll go back to a funny story. So my dad, I helped him update his resume a few years ago, and it was a 3-page resume that had to help him trim down. And if you went all the way to the very first job, you could, through the resume. My dad's had a career all the way going back to like HP. He used to work at HP back when HP was the top of the top tech company, right? And he has worked in what is called e-commerce for the. Oops, sorry about the balloons. E-commerce for decades, and he has spelled e-commerce differently. It started with electronic commerce, and then the e-commerce was a hyphen, and then it became one word because it was a known thing for most people, and then it just became commerce because the idea of anything commerce not on the internet at this point is almost a wild notion for us when the way that we tap our credit cards. So um, the same way that I look at AI businesses right now is everybody is an AI company. It's just about where on the stack do you sit. If you're building AI models, great. If you're taking AI like we do, and we call it applied AI, taking it to a previous business, a sector that has yet to been touched by AI, the community space, the enterprise community space, and bringing new ideas of how to build better connected experiences. You could argue we are also an AI company, right? We are an AI first community platform. And I think at some point, I can't remember. I think it was Kosla that said it, that like in your last podcast, right? And I liked what you were saying with Aman. Is that at some point it will be illegal to not use AI in certain businesses, because the idea of it being so much better at being able to recognize certain things and understand certain things is going to be built into our legislation. Obviously, that will take many years based on how our politics moves, but like the way business should be thinking about it too is customers will look and say, look, this doesn't have the AI functionality that I would have expected someone to build it with. And you will get demerits based on the lack of personalization and customization in your feature functionality. So yeah, not an easy answer, but I would say yes, we are an AI company, but we are in the applied AI space.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely gonna go that way. I think it's like the way nobody talks about themselves as an internet business anymore. It's like,
Right.
yeah, what do you mean you're an internet business? Like you're literally just you have a
E-commerce. Who's an
website or what?
e-commerce business, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Uh, I think that's a good way to frame it for sure. Um, all right. I think I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to leave the listeners with about Tightnit?
No, I mean, come check us out at tightnit.ai. We have a community at community.tightnit.ai, and anyone's more than welcome to
Nice.
join, ask us any questions in the community. I think the thing that I would love to discuss with you, because it's been all over my feed, is Devin
Yeah,
is a hot
absolutely.
topic this week. Because
Yeah, I wrote
everyone's
about
waiting for
it
their job to get replaced, but I have my
exactly.
thoughts.
Yeah, so I wrote about Devin in the newsletter yesterday. For those unfamiliar, Devin is a new tool. It's not a new model or anything. I think it's using like probably GPT and Anthropic, probably multiple models, but it is a new tool by Cognition AI that says it can do the work of software engineers. It's basically a software engineer AI. Um, it is not available to the public, so we can't test it. I put in a request to complete some tasks, but they haven't gotten back to me yet. But it looks super cool. People are putting demos up on Twitter, and it looks like it's completing. It's able to build, basically like full stack applications just from simple English prompts. It also like interacts with you to like ask you what you want, and it's kind of more like an interactive experience. It's able to look at GitHub repositories and contribute to them. It's even able to train LLMs. So yeah, it looks pretty cool. I saw some other people like there's this guy that made this thing called the App Crapper, and it's basically like Devin, but he just like made it while having beers, and he open sourced it, and apparently it's like beating Devin at making certain apps. So that was pretty interesting. I don't know. I don't think it's going to replace software engineers anytime soon, but I think it's definitely like one step on that path. I think like within maybe like 10 years we'll get something that can actually build like like basic full scale apps that nobody needs to really think about. But I don't know. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it today it could be a cool party trick. Don't get me wrong; it is creating full, like what we would call a full app, but it's a very small full stack application. And
Yeah.
I think there takes like a lot of knowledge being a software engineer to actually build like an application. And there are so many questions. Like I have both a PM and engineering background, right? Like I think the struggle with any app building is that you have to define the requirements. And if you have if you just tell it to generate a certain type of app, it's not going to understand what you want because it hasn't even asked you the right questions yet. And it doesn't even know the right questions to ask you to do it. And I think there will come a point when obviously it will get better and better, right? Like this is a point in time. And so we can critique it as much as we want. And then next year, Devin 2.0 comes out, it resolves half of the problems and it keeps going from there. And we run into this logarithmic growth of like, all right, it gets better until it does match the mean. But you'll always have architects. And I think what it's doing is a lot of junior engineering where it can go and fix particular bugs by understanding, you know, enough of a context of the code base to go back and fix certain spots. I don't see it hitting a point where it will be able to get to production grade applications today. I think it is a great place to get a demo up and working, and that's probably going to be one of its primary use cases, is just being able to say, look, let's put some ideas in, pump out like a visual demo, something that's not integrated into any other outside external third party sources, but a great visual demo of what it could be. And that's still a really powerful use case, because seeing for a lot of folks is understanding and believing what is possible. So I do think it's going to be phenomenal for starting a new app. And it might even be better than like Copilot, for instance, for kind of cleaning up your application code as you go along. And I could see a lot of value there, of you create a pull request and it goes back and says, look, I'm going to make these updates here because based on other code outside your pull request, it would perform better. Phenomenal use case. Catching performance bugs and security bugs before they happen. Huge $1 trillion market right there. And hopefully we have tools like Devin that grow into that space.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a lot of the junior dev work that, you'd be doing to like write either like, yeah, just like basic front end code, like people that come from like coding boot camps and uh, don't really have fundamental engineering knowledge. I think that stuff is probably out the window. Um, but and the other thing that stuff like this enables is that it also pushes the bar higher. Where if an actual engineer is able to get a lot of their basic kind of like grunt work out of the way with something like Devin, it frees them up to think more creatively, build larger applications just, as one person. And so, yeah, it's just going to push the bar higher for the stuff that we do see get created and put into production. So I think that's probably uh, like a more immediate outcome than people getting replaced. I do think some people will get replaced and more people down the line, but I do think the first kind of outcome we'll see is that the bar just gets pushed higher and you just see more people creating more cool stuff. So yeah, which
Yeah.
is a win for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, we're already seeing, right? Like devs every decade get pushed farther and farther up the stack,
Yeah.
because I think what people forget about what it means to be a developer or even just a builder is you are the one defining requirements. Code is just a definition of the requirements of how an app should operate. Like I think that is at its core how you can break down what code is. And the code is going to get easier and easier to define, but there's always going to need to be somebody to give it the definition of what it's supposed to do.
Mhm.
I do see a world though, and I've thought this when GPT first came out. Like, again, I'm a PM, right? Like, I didn't see my world getting replaced because I'm like I am also helping define the requirements. But I think
Mhm.
there is going to be a point in time when you'll have an AI that can do my job. It won't do my job as well, but if it can do my job 100 times, it might get correct one or two or three times. And if it can do testing and experimentation around it, you will find a place where PMs could basically get replaced, and what is next. And the definition is coming from an actual bot, and it does build what its customers want. And I think this is where you end up having this like life cycle of app development, especially around a community. Is a community is telling you what to build, right? A community
Yeah.
like the ones we're working on, they are telling you what to do next. And my job is to use AI to decipher what people are asking you. And I need other tools to then take that deciphering, hey, I need this and I need it to work like this, to go out and build it. And if we can get to that layer of where there are tools that are building and tools that are getting feedback and experimenting and understanding at a customer level what people want, there is going to be a life cycle of applications that do try to build full apps with mostly people just making sure that they're going to be almost like at a Ford factory, just making sure the car is moving down the line. And I
Yeah.
think that's a real possibility for engineering in the next few decades.
Yeah, well, I mean, you saw Jensen Huang in one of his like his talks or interviews or something like that. He was like, "Yeah, your kids should not learn how to code."
Yeah.
I
What?
mean,
Let me
very
ask this:
interesting.
if you, I have a theory. What do you think is the next space? In like based on if you had a kid going into school 20 years from now, what would you think is the next space for them? Because I have some
20
theories of some
years, I don't
spaces. Yeah,
know. 20 years, it's hard to know what the world will look like. I mean, now, if it was now, I would say, I mean, it really depends how you're inclined, right? Like, if you're actually inclined towards being like way more logical and um, like thinking about math and science, then I actually think like deep tech work will always be super valuable. But I think you need to go probably even deeper, like further down the tech stack. Um, where you're studying like either like materials or like physics or something like that.
yeah.
I would say like hardware stuff is going to be probably the next phase, but like in 20 years, maybe even that's like we're beyond that. I don't know. Maybe then they should just study philosophy or something.
Right. Well, yeah. And I don't think any degree is going anywhere. I agree with you. I think the computer science degree is becoming like ubiquitous across other degrees. That if you don't have the ability to understand code and in the future how to leverage AI for your career, it's like that is a
Yeah,
missed opportunity. And I
yeah,
see
yeah.
like the one that I'm excited about, which is interesting, is like solving rare genetic diseases is like a huge
Mm,
space where
yeah,
I think we have this huge opportunity to build personalized medicine at scale with AI.
yeah,
And I think that's a space which is going to globally affect us, right? If we have the ability to improve the human quality of life and the lifespan, that is more. I mean, I don't mean it at like a macroeconomic level, but like people will be able to put more back into the rest of the world, and the people we invest in are going to be more able to do more for longer in their life. And I could see that just fundamentally changing like how humanity is able to just produce more stuff and more content and more of everything, but with a better quality of life.
yeah. Totally. I think that combine. I think like initially we'll see like a wave of like cool AI specific stuff. Like this AI can do this. There's this new model. There's like this generative tool, and then we'll see like whenever it is in the next decade or 2 decades, like AI being applied to a bunch of different fields that just takes them completely parabolic. So I think like robotics is obviously a pretty like obvious one now, but we'll see it with biotech. We'll see it with I don't know, space science. We'll see it with I don't know, like oceanography. I don't know. We'll see with just a ton of stuff. So
Yeah.
that I think will definitely what will happen, and like AI again will become basically table stakes, where it's like, oh, you're an AI company will sound like saying you're an internet company.
Yeah. It's your
Yeah,
dad's resume with e-commerce, you know. You have it will be ridiculous to mention it because it will just be a thing that you just take for granted, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I agree. Like I think there's AI, and this is again where I think applied AI is so interesting. You know, I think when
hmm
the internet first came out, there was this big push into networking, and you have your companies like Cisco that came out, but you haven't really seen another Cisco in a very long time because the it really. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are companies still innovating in the networking space and still pushing Cloudflare's out there, and it is moving, but it kind of plateaus at some point. And AI is one that definitely has a high ceiling, but you're going to see at a point when applied AI overtakes investment in AI, right? We're building the foundational
yeah,
tools today to obviously get to AGI and to get to, some level of like a foundational model that can generally understand various topics, right? Like that's at its core. But then once you understand those various topics, it needs to be applied to those topics in a user
yeah.
friendly way. And that's going to be that next wave. It's going to be the Amazons out there that go, look, the internet has started, and now I'm going to apply commerce to the internet. Or,
Yeah.
having those companies form is going to be the next big thing in my mind.
Yeah. I'm just thinking when we're older, what is our e-commerce on the resume gonna be? Is it just gonna be like, yeah, I worked in crypto and then AI and all this? Now it's just like you just that's like I don't know.
Right.
Every company has a blockchain. Every company uses AI. Like I don't know. I don't even know what the future holds, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Um, Zach, you got anything else? This was a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
No, I mean, I was happy to be here. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's great that you're starting an AI podcast because, there is so much to talk about every week. And so I feel like, yeah, there is a lot going on. And I mean, hopefully it takes off because I think there's a ton of people that want to break into AI too, and I think that's a good. You kind of come from that same world of like, look, you're not an engineer, but you are super passionate about it, and I hope that others can jump in it too, and at least get like that general understanding of it, so that they can feel more comfortable in those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what this is about. Is it's gonna be so broadly, I don't know, just ubiquitous in everybody's life that you kind of have to have these conversations about it because it's just a very weird and like overwhelming force, you know. So, uh, yeah, I think at least for me, this kind of stuff is helpful, and yeah, hopefully other people like it too. So, Zach, thank you for coming on. This is fantastic. People can check you out at Tighnit, community.tighnit.com to join the community. Thank you once again for being on. This has been the AI Renaissance Podcast. Talk to you soon.